In this tutorial, I'll show you how to create this mesmerizing 3D ripple logo effect step by step. Hi, if this is your first time here, I'm Elan Stern, motion designer, educator, and proud addict of bright colors and shiny extruded logos. You can follow along and build it with me from scratch, or if you want to save time and support this channel, grab the project file from the link below. Alright, let's dive in. Okay, we'll start by creating a new composition. I'm going to select this preset and I'm just going to name it 3D Ripple Logo. I'll set the duration to 10 seconds and that's it. We're going to start now by creating a background layer. So I'll double click on the rectangle tool. This is going to create a shape layer. I don't need any stroke. I'll click on the fill color and I'll choose some dark blue. And this is probably going to take me a long time because I don't know which blue to choose. All right, I'm going to settle with this one and I'll rename this one Beachy. And in the properties panel, I'll scale it to, let's go with 300, just to make sure that if we're going to convert it to 3D, which I'm going to do right now, we'll have enough space when we move the camera. All right, next thing, I'll double click on the text tool to create a type in the middle of the screen and of course type the digit 2. So for this 2, I don't need any stroke. I'm going to change it to Gotham Bold, but you can choose any font you like. So not book, I wanted bold. Let's go with 400 to begin with. And I think this is going to be okay. So I'll select the text and I'll right click on it and choose create shapes from text. I'll delete this text because we are going to actually work with path. So, or actually shape layers. I'm going to rename it control, making sure that if we want to replace it, we can then copy a path from, let's say, Illustrator or create something over here and just replace the path. So the path, if I'm opening the content, I'm just going to rename this main, is over here. This is the path that I'm referring to. I'm actually going to rename this one path 1. And while I'm here, I'll select the main and then I'm going to add another path, which is going to be path 2. Now, right now, I'm not going to add anything to it. It's going to serve us in the future when and if we want to use a logo that consists of more than one path. And if you have more than 2, then you add, you need to actually add more than 2, but we'll get to this. Anyhow, I'm just going to close this and this one as well. And I'm also going to convert this one to a 3D, not before going to the align panel and just make sure it is center in the middle of the comp, because we can't use the align panel when we have 3D layers. Did you know? Now you know. Anyhow, back to the properties panel. I'm going to say goodbye to the fill. I'm just going to leave myself with a stroke. And what I want is, let's go with saturated colors or something like this that works nice with the background and we can see it. I'm just going to round it to 200 and maybe 90 and 70. All right, you can choose any colors you like, of course. I'm going to change the stroke width to 5. And now I'll make sure that I'm using the advanced 3D renderer because I want to extrude this. And to do it, I'll open up the geometry options. I'll set the bevel style to convex and maybe bevel depth of 5. And then I'll tap twice and set the extrusion depth to 100. Now, the problem is that we actually can't see the extruded type or shape in our case. And let me show you what happens. I'll hold down the Option key, Alt on Windows, and I'm going to move behind this. And, you know, you can see the background is basically intersecting and the extrusion by default is going to the opposite side. We actually want to change it so it will be up and not down. And to do this, what we need to do is open up the transform of the layer and then disconnect the scale property, the scale values. I want to make sure that I can see both the scale and the geometry options. So I'm just going to press Option Shift and hide a few things that I don't need to see. And then I want to connect this scale property to the extrusion depth. And After Effects is going to write this code for us. We need to modify it just a tiny bit in order to flip the direction of the Z extrusion. So let's start with the first value. I'm just going to type the word value and then inside brackets 0 for the X. And then this one wants to be the same thing, but inside the brackets 1 for the Y, of course. And this one, I'm going to say temp, which is basically going to take the geometry extrusion depth, but I'm going to multiply it by -1. And now, if we're going to change, we can actually close this. If we're going to change the extrusion, we're actually extruding it towards us and not the other way around. All right. Let's move on. We want now to animate this extrusion depth over 2 seconds. So let's go to 1 second here. I'm just going to create a keyframe. I'll close this transform and I'm going to go to the beginning. Let's set it to 20. So we'll have something in the beginning and then I'll copy it, go to 2 seconds and set it, or basically just paste the same value. While we are here, I'm going to option click on the stopwatch and let's just loop this. So loop out and inside the quotation marks, we're going to use the ping pong. And if we're going to have a look at it, this is how it looks. Yeah, very boring. So I'll select all keyframes, press F9 to convert them to easy ease, and then a quick visit into the graph editor, making sure that we are editing the value graph, by the way. I'm just going to modify it a touch. So we'll have a little bit more of an easy ease towards the middle section and then going back. Almost like it is breathing, something like this. And you can modify it, but I think this is going to work for what we need here. All right, perfect. I'll close those things. And if you're here, let's open up the material options and turn on cast shadows. I'm not going to use this in this example, but let's say for future sake, if we do want those duplicated versions, because we're going to duplicate this layer a handful of times, if you do want it to cast shadows, then it is good to turn it on right now. I'm also going to scroll down and set the specular shininess to 66. And notice that this is going to catch nice reflections. As you can see, if I'm just going to preview it, this is how it looks. All right. Now I'll close this, and this is a great time to add camera and lights. So before doing it, I'm going to go to the pop-up menu and reset my default camera. So I'm going to start from scratch, or basically from the point that I'm looking toward this shape. And then I'll press Command Option Shift C and I'll add a new camera. I'll go with 35mm and click OK. Immediately, I'm going to right click on the camera, and from the camera submenu, I'll create an orbit null. And this is just going to make things more predictable. In case you are following me, you'll get the same or similar camera motion. I'm going to press R to show the orientation and rotation, set the X rotation to 30 degrees. And for the Y rotation, let's go with 20. And then I'll keyframe the Y rotation from the start until the end, from 20 to -20, which is going to give us something like this. And if we want to get a little bit more closer to this logo, then we can add the scale property. And because we are using a null object to control the camera, remember the camera is parented to this null, we actually need to go down if you want to zoom in. So let's go with 60 to prove this claim. And this is how it looks right now. All right, I want to make the lighting a little bit more interesting. So let's go over here. We can close this guy. And we're going to, again, mesh our fist on all the modifiers. Command, Option, Shift, this time with the letter L to create a spotlight. I'll set the color to white, click OK, and then click OK again. And I'm actually happy with the default location, so I'm just going to leave it like so. But you are more than welcome to play with it if you want a different kind of effect. We are losing some of the nice reflections that we saw earlier, so we're going to use the same modifiers to add another light. This one is going to be a point light. Again, I'm not going to touch those settings in terms of intensity, but I'll move the light position. Let's try 540 and then maybe 40 in terms of its Y, and I'm going to bring it closer to us by setting it to 1000. So I do have a little bit of experience with those values. And if this is too bright, then we can change the intensity, say to 50 or maybe 60%. I think this looks really nice. Now, the next step is very important. We are going to use the index expression in order to control the duplicated versions of this logo. So it's actually going to look at the index number, this little thing of the layers. So we need to take all of those utility layers, the lights, the camera, and of course the null, and make sure they are under everything, because this is the 3D composition. It won't affect anything in terms of the look, but it's really critical that the first layer here will be the control layer. So now I'm going to duplicate this control layer and I'll name it logo. And I'm also going to change the color to something else. Let's go with yellow. Why not? Next, I'll open up the contents of this logo layer and make sure I can also see the contents of my control layer. And I'm just going to marry the path 1 and path 2 using the parent and link option. So I'll need to drill down both of these so I can see them. And maybe also maximize the timeline viewer so it will be easier to see everything in one space. And then I'm just going to drag path 1 of this logo to path 1 of the control. I'll do the same thing for path 2. Remember, this is now empty, but it will serve us in the future. So nothing is going to look different if we're going to bring the entire interface back. Basically, we are just using this one now as a controller. So if we're going to change this path, it will ripple down the other duplicated versions that we're going to create from this logo. So just to see how this looks, I'm going to switch off the visibility of this layer, and we can see that the duplicated version is mimicking the same path. All right, I'll close those two path layers. And now for the logo layer, I'll select the word main. I'll go to the add menu and I'll add the merge path operator. And again, it won't do anything right now, but trust me on this, this is something you want for the duplicated versions. And I'll show you why in a moment. The mode is set to add, this is the default, and it needs to be under path 1 and path 2. And if you have more than 2 paths, then under everything. Okay, now let's control the colors. Let's make the colors change every time we are duplicating this layer. And to do it, I'm going to add an expression to the stroke color. So let me go through this expression and explain how it works. So we are starting with the seed random, and it takes the index of the layer. This is why we are getting a different color. The true argument will make sure that it's not flickering every frame, and it's just going to keep it consistent. And then we have this random. Basically, if we keep it empty, it's going to give us numbers between 0 and 1, which is going to be used for the hue. As you can see, this is plugged over here. So this hue is the random from HLS to RGB that After Effects is going to actually change. And we are keeping the saturation and the alpha the same. Now, it doesn't matter if you understand it or not. You can just freeze the video and copy the code from the screen. All right, let's check it. I'm going to close it and then I'll duplicate this layer, and you can see that we have different colors every time we are duplicating this logo. I'm going to select everything and delete it. And then to make the logo grow, we are going to use the offset path operator. So I'm going to close the stroke. Again, make sure to select the main thing here under the contents, and then go to this little add menu and add the offset path operator. Open it up, First, I want to tie the amount value to a slider control so I can change the amount every time. And to do it, I'll go back to the control layer. I can close everything over here. And then from the effect menu, I'll go to expression controls and I'll add a slider control. I'll rename this slider offset amount. And I'll lock it in place so I can still see it. And now, returning back to this offset path, I'll select this amount value and use the pick whip to point it over here. And I'll start with a value of 50. Now, to make those offset paths look a little bit nicer, I rather change it from miter join to round join. But you can go your own way here. It's totally up to you. I'll leave the copies as is because we do want a single copy every time we are duplicating it. However, for the copy offset, I'm going to add an expression. So instead of 1, I'm actually going to type in index and then negative or minus 1. And this is basically going to reset it to 0 because right now we are using index, which is 1, and we are taking away 1. But when we are going to, and let's just close everything, duplicate it, and I'll just press Command D a few times, you can see how this is working. And now with every copy, we're going to get a bigger, wider offset path as well as different colors. So I'm just going to continue pressing Command D until I fill the screen. And if I don't like the color arrangement, well, of course, I can modify the individual stroke colors, or I can continue to duplicate another one until I get a satisfactory result. So, something like this is going to work for this example. Now, I want to remind you that the first layer here is the closest, and then the second one is this one, the third one is this one, etc. And this is important because the next step is to animate it in a cascade style. And to do it, I need to select the first layer, in this case, logo 23, and then scroll down to the original one, and then hold down Shift and select this. And After Effects is going to remember this selection order. Now I'll hold down Command and Option, and this is going to change my cursor to the quick offset operator. And now I can start to drag those layers, and I'll monitor this heads-up display until I'll see 3, which is going to work nicely in this case. And now I'll switch to Draft 3D, so when I'll preview, it's actually going to work in real time or close to real time to show you the animation that we've managed to create. And this looks so nice, and it was relatively easy to achieve. Now, let me show you what is the best workflow if you want to replace the logo with a different shape. So I'll switch to Illustrator, where I have a few logos that we can use in order to demonstrate. I'll start with my own one. I'll select it and copy it to the clipboard. Then I'll switch back to After Effects and go all the way down to our control layer. And then I'll open it up. I'll open the contents, and then I'll select Path 1. And now I'll paste the logo. Now, usually it will come in a very different place. So what you need to do is, while everything is still selected, press Command or Control T. This is going to give you the free transform tool. And then just use the cursor keys, so the arrows. I'm also holding down Shift to re-center it in the middle of the frame, and then just check how this works. Now, I do want to remind you that we have this slider here, and this is going to help us to control the offset path, right? So we can make those paths closer together if we like, or further apart, depending on the logo shape itself. And that's it. This is already working nicely. And of course, you can just render the result if you are following me or you are using the preset, whatever works for you. I'm just going to hide this camera null object, not before showing you that you can, of course, revisit it and change the camera angle as well as the position and everything. So let's just set it to the middle here and maybe zoom in even further. Remember, you need lower values, so maybe 40% if you want to get close to it. It's all vectors, so you're not going to lose any quality. I'm going to switch off Draft 3D, so we are going to see the full render. And of course, we can also move the camera down. So this is another way to recenter the frame. So whatever works for you, I'm going to set it back to 50% in this case. You can, of course, change the orientation, the rotation, all of those good stuff. Now, I'm going to show you how to work with a more complicated or elaborated logos that consist of more shapes. And if you need to do so, I already set up this rig to work with 2 paths, but of course, if you need more, you need to add additional path. So let me show you again how this works. I'll go to the beginning again, and I'll switch back to Illustrator, and let's take the YouTube logo or something that looks like YouTube, and I'll copy the first path, return to After Effects, select the path, and then just replace it. And then while we are here, we are also going to make sure it is centered. So I'm just using the cursor keys. And now we're going to go and grab the second path. So this is the play icon. In this case, I'll just paste it over here. And of course, it doesn't come in the correct place. So I need to make sure it is set more or less in the middle. Now we can't see it over here. And the reason is because this control layer is switched off. So in case you are working with multiple shapes, you actually need to turn it on. And this is going to bring and render everything back. And you need to go all the way up and switch off the first layer, because remember, this layer is duplicated now. Now, if I'm going to move my cursor, you can see that because we've used, I'm just going to open one of them, this merge path operator. This is what's working here. This is what's causing it not to duplicate the play icon again. If I'll switch this visibility off, it's actually going to create a duplicated version for this. And this is something that, of course, you can turn on and off depending on the look that you're after. But I just want to make sure that you understand how this works and those limitations, of course. So I'm going to close it. And let's do another example. So again, I'm just going to go to the beginning. This is the easiest way for me in terms of the look to replace those paths. Return back to the Illustrator document. Let's grab the main shape of the Apple logo and then replace it same way we did before. I'm just going to move it to the center. Something like this should work. And then let's take the leaf and then paste it over here. And of course, we need to make sure it is in the correct location. So I'm eyeballing it. Now, sometimes, maybe most of the times, you are going to see some leftovers because After Effects is also insisting to paste masks from Illustrator, which we don't need and we didn't ask for. So if this happens to you, just select those masks and say goodbye to them by pressing delete. And then if we're going to move forward, we are seeing that this is the desired result. And of course, we are more than welcome to go back to the camera null object and modify its settings, maybe go with 70 in this case, and maybe also move it to the right. I'm going to go to the beginning, change this to a different angle. I don't know, maybe something like this. And of course, feel free to animate between those values. So maybe I'll add a keyframe for the scale. And while this is doing this number, we're going to get closer to it as well as change the position. So we are free to do everything we want. This is After Effects. It is not AI. We have full control. And this is also very fast to render. Let me prove it to you by previewing it full frame. Now remember that you can grab the project file for a symbolic fee and make it your own. I've packed 2 versions over here, so I'm just going to say goodbye to the one that we've built together and show you this is the single shape version, similar to what we built step by step, and this is a multi-shape version. And of course, you can play with all the other settings, add additional camera, play with the offset path, and customize it as your heart content. Like any preset, this is just the starting suggestion. So I hope this helps you in your own project. And if you create something cool, please share it and tag me. I'd love to see it and give you a proper salute. And of course, don't forget to do the YouTube things like subscribe, comment, all the stuff that brings joy to my soul and fuels me to keep making content that makes you happy. You see, this is a little magical circle we've built together.